All right, let's get right into this. We're going to unpack a legal case that starts with a really violent assault. But in a wild twist, this story doesn't end with a hunt for the attacker. Nope, it ends with the victim herself facing charges, and she claims it's all because she dared to criticize the police.
So let's start with this one line, taken right from a court document. I had a knot on my head like the cartoons. It sounds so weird, almost funny, but it immediately grounds you in the very real, very painful violence that kicked this whole thing off.
And right there, that's the absolute core mystery here. The woman who was attacked so badly, Olivia Walker, was later charged with elder neglect when her mother passed away. But it didn't even stop there. They also hit her with a felony murder charge, which is a really serious legal charge that can apply even if you didn't directly cause a death, but a death happened while you were supposedly committing another felony. So you have to ask yourself, how in the world does the victim of a violent crime end up accused of murder? To even begin to understand how that's possible, we've got to rewind. Because this whole story, it doesn't start with her mother's death. It starts with a completely different crime. The one Olivia Walker says the police just flat out refused to investigate. Okay, so it's May 2019. Olivia Walker says she was violently assaulted right outside her own house. And according to her legal motion, the injuries were severe. We're talking head trauma, seizures, even nerve damage. So look, this was not some minor scuffle. This was a brutal attack that you'd think would trigger a really serious police response. And this wasn't some mystery case with zero leads. According to Walker's motion, she basically handed the detective everything they could possibly need on a silver platter: a video of the actual attack, a photo of the person she says did it, and even a license plate number. I mean, that's the kind of evidence that should have cracked this case wide open.
And yet, what happened with all that evidence? Well, according to Walker's motion, absolutely nothing. She claims that even though she gave them a super clear path to an arrest, the police department just didn't do anything. Her case, as she tells it, just went cold.
So what do you do when the very system that's supposed to protect you just goes completely silent? Well, for Olivia Walker, staying quiet was not an option. She decided she had to find her voice and take her fight for justice into the public eye. She went straight to social media, and she started directly calling out the DeKalb County Police Department. And as you can see from this tweet and her motion, she didn't just point out that they were doing nothing. She started asking why. She publicly floated the idea that maybe bias was the reason her case was getting ignored. And her criticism didn't stop with her own assault case. It quickly grew bigger. She started connecting her own experience to what she saw as a much wider problem, framing her situation as just one piece of a systemic failure by the department. She started tweeting about what she called a record number of unsolved murders, which, really cranked up the public pressure on the whole county. And right here, this is where the story takes its most unbelievable turn, because the focus of law enforcement is about to shift in a huge way, not onto her attacker, but right onto the woman who was publicly begging them for help. So this timeline really lays out the core of her entire legal argument. Let's walk through it. First, May 2019, she gets assaulted. Then, that summer, she starts publicly criticizing the police. And it's after all that criticism that her mother passes away. And then, almost immediately, she's hit with these charges for elder neglect and felony murder. For her, the timing isn't a coincidence. The timing is everything.
And this sequence of events is what leads to the explosive legal claim in her motion: retaliatory prosecution. Now, in simple terms, what she's arguing is that these charges, they aren't actually about a crime she committed. She's claiming they are pure punishment for her decision to speak out against the police, a direct hit on her constitutional right to free speech. Her motion essentially asks the court to just look at the glaring contrast here. On one side, you've got her assault case, ignored, she says, even with overwhelming evidence. And then on the other side, you've got the case against her, pursued like crazy, with press conferences and everything, even though she says crucial biological evidence was destroyed. In her view, this isn't just a different way of handling things, it's proof that they were out to get her. So, with this incredibly serious claim of retaliation as the centerpiece, what is she actually asking the court to do? And get this, it's really important to know she filed this motion all by herself, acting as her own lawyer. This quote from her motion really just cuts right to the heart of her defense. She's basically saying, look, because all the biological evidence related to my mother's death was destroyed, the prosecution can never, ever scientifically prove what caused her death. And without that evidence, she argues, any claim that they know for sure what happened is just impossible. Her demands are incredibly bold and direct. First, she's asking the court to dismiss all the charges with prejudice, which is a legal term that means they can never, ever be brought against her again. And second, she wants the DeKalb County Police Department completely kicked off the case, arguing that they've proven they can't possibly be impartial here. So when you step back and look at it, the Olivia Walker case, as she lays it out in her own motion, it pushes past the details of just one investigation and forces us to ask a much, much bigger question. It's a question about the balance of power between a citizen and the police. Where exactly do we draw the line between protected free speech and a criminal act? And maybe the most important question of all is, who gets to draw that line?